Captain Mason Drake stood in the middle of the ruined city, his armor covered in dust and burns. Eos was once a beautiful colony, full of green parks and shining towers. Now smoke filled the sky, and strange shadows moved in the fog. The Xerthians had come from the stars, bringing their war machines and their hunger for conquest. Mason was not afraid. He had seen too many battles to be scared now. His squad, a mix of soldiers and civilian volunteers, waited for his orders. The enemy was close. They could hear the clicking sounds of Xerthian legs on metal and stone. Every soldier looked to Mason, trusting him to guide them. Suddenly, blue lasers cut through the air. Mason shouted, "Take cover," and dived behind a broken wall. His squad fired back, but the Xerthians kept coming. They were tall, insect-like aliens with hard shells and 4 glowing eyes. Their weapons hummed with energy. Mason crawled to a fallen comrade. The young man was shaking but alive. "You're going to be okay," Mason said, pulling him to safety. Even in the chaos, Mason always helped his team. The fighting grew worse. Mason saw families hiding in the ruins. He knew he could not let the Xerthians take the city. He rallied his squad. "We hold the line here. No one gets past us." One by one, the soldiers found courage. A young woman named Sarah took aim and knocked down an enemy. Mason nodded at her. "Good shot." He fired his own rifle, picking off 2 Xerthians before ducking back down. Hours passed. Mason's body ached, but he refused to give up. He remembered Earth, his home, and all the people depending on him. He shouted, "For Eos, for humanity." The soldiers echoed his cry. Even the civilians found weapons and joined the fight. Then, the Xerthians changed tactics. They sent in their largest machine, a spider tank with legs like steel trees. Mason knew this could end everything. He ordered his team to fall back, drawing the spider tank into a trap. While the machine crashed through buildings, Mason and Sarah slipped behind it. They planted charges on its weak spot. As they ran for cover, the bomb exploded. The spider tank fell, burning. The Xerthians paused, surprised by the humans' bravery. But there were too many enemies. Mason saw more Xerthian soldiers landing from dropships. His team was tired, outnumbered, and surrounded. Still, Mason stood tall. "We fight to the last," he said. "They will remember what it means to face humans." High above, on a hidden Xerthian ship, the alien queen watched the battle. She saw Mason's courage and cleverness. She leaned forward and spoke to her advisors. Her voice was cold and curious. "I want him. Bring me the human." The first part of Mason's legend had just begun. Deep inside the cold, shining halls of the Xerthian mothership, Empress Virel, the alien queen, sat upon her throne. The walls around her glowed with a strange blue light, and alien servants waited silently for her command. On a large screen before her, she watched the battle happening on Eos. Empress Virel had lived for centuries and seen many wars, but the human warrior caught her attention. She saw Mason Drake's bravery as he fought the spider tank. She noticed his cleverness, his way of leading the others, and how the humans refused to surrender even when hope was gone. To her, Mason was not just another enemy soldier. He was something special. Her advisors, a group of tall Xerthians with shining green shells, discussed the battle quietly. One said, "These humans are stubborn, my queen. Shall we destroy them all?" The queen did not answer at once. Her large, bright eyes stayed fixed on Mason, who was still fighting below. Finally, she raised one slender arm, making everyone silent. "That human warrior," she said, her voice echoing through the chamber, "has the spirit of a true leader. He fights with skill, but also with heart." Another advisor spoke up, clicking his jaws. "He is dangerous, Your Majesty. It is best to eliminate him." Virel shook her head slowly. "No, I do not want him dead. I want him alive." She looked at her guards. "Bring me the human. I want to see what makes him different." Her words sent a shiver through the room. Nobody ever questioned the queen, but some felt uneasy. Taking the human prisoner was risky, especially one as dangerous as Mason Drake. Meanwhile, on the surface of Eos, Mason was guiding his team through the ruins. His breath was heavy, and his arm bled from a fresh cut, but he never slowed down. He gave orders, helped the wounded, and made sure the civilians were safe. He had no idea that high above, an alien queen had chosen him as her new target. Suddenly, the sky lit up. New Xerthian dropships landed, and from them came the queen's elite hunters. These were not normal soldiers. They moved faster, wore stronger armor, and carried strange, silent weapons. Their leader, a tall Xerthian named Commander Zul, had only one mission: capture Mason Drake. Mason's squad heard the new danger first. Sarah shouted, "Captain, more bugs. These look different." Mason turned to see the hunters spreading out, moving like shadows. He realized they were after him. "Fall back," he yelled. "Everyone, split up. Don't let them catch you." The hunt had begun. Mason ran through the broken city, dodging lasers and leaping over rubble. The elite hunters were close behind, never speaking, always moving faster. But Mason's mind was sharp, and his spirit would not break. Above, the queen watched and smiled. The game was on, and Mason's fate was now tied to the will of the alien queen. Mason Drake raced through the empty streets of Eos. Behind him, the sound of alien weapons echoed through the broken city. The Xerthian elite hunters were closer now, their dark forms moving quickly through smoke and fire. Mason's heart pounded, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had to keep going, not just for himself, but for everyone else still fighting. He darted into an old shop, ducking behind shattered shelves. He checked his ammo, almost gone. His wounds stung, but he pushed the pain away. He used his comm to send a message to his squad. "Stay hidden. Don't try to rescue me. Save the civilians." Even now, Mason was thinking about his people. Commander Zyle, leader of the hunters, tracked Mason's every move. The hunters moved like a pack of wolves, communicating silently, cutting off Mason's escape routes. Mason tried to trick them, leaving false trails and hiding his heat signature, but the hunters were clever. They had studied him. They knew his tactics. Mason dashed through a burned-out alley and spotted a group of civilians hiding under a collapsed roof. He stopped, checked on them quickly, and gave them a path to escape. "Take the old subway tunnel," he whispered. "Move fast. I'll distract them." The people nodded, hope shining in their eyes for a moment. Suddenly, a hunter leaped down from above. Mason rolled away just in time as sharp claws struck the ground where he stood. He fired his last bullets, slowing the creature, but more hunters appeared, surrounding him. Mason drew his combat knife, refusing to give up. He fought hard, slashing and dodging, but the Xerthians were too many and too strong. One hunter knocked the knife from Mason's hand. Another hit him with an electric net. Pain shot through his body, but Mason clenched his teeth and tried to break free. The hunters wrapped him in glowing cords, pinning his arms and legs. Even now, Mason glared at them with fierce blue eyes. Commander Zyle looked down at Mason and tilted his head. "The Queen wants you alive, human. Do not struggle." Mason spat dust and replied, "Tell your queen she'll regret this." The hunters lifted Mason and carried him through the ruins. As he was taken away, Mason looked back and saw Sarah and the other survivors watching from a distance. He gave a small nod, trying to show them he was not afraid. The hunters brought Mason to a waiting Xerthian ship. The door closed with a hiss, and the engines roared to life. The last thing Mason saw was the burning city growing smaller below. He wondered if he would ever return. High above, Empress Virel watched her prize arrive. She smiled, her interest growing even stronger. The human warrior had fought bravely, but now he was hers. His true test was just beginning. Mason Drake woke up slowly. His body ached from the battle and from the electric net. He opened his eyes and saw a room unlike any he had ever seen. The walls were smooth and glowing with a soft blue light. Strange, sweet smells floated in the air. Everything felt alien, too clean, too quiet. He tried to move, but strong bands held his arms and legs. Mason was trapped on a platform in the center of the room. Around him, tall Xerthian guards stood silent and watchful. Their armor was decorated with silver and green. He could feel their cold, insect eyes watching his every move. Suddenly, a door opened at the far end of the chamber. Soft, strange music played as Empress Varel entered. She was taller than any other Xerthian, her shell shining like polished glass. A crown of glowing stones rested on her head, and her many eyes glittered with intelligence. The guards bowed deeply. Mason did not. He sat up as straight as he could, refusing to show fear. Varel moved closer, her movements smooth and graceful. She studied Mason for a long moment, saying nothing. Finally, her voice echoed through the room, clear and cold. "So, you are the famous human warrior, Captain Mason Drake." Mason looked her in the eyes and replied, "I am, and you must be the queen who ordered my capture." A smile touched the queen's mouth. "Yes, I have seen your battles. You are clever and strong. Most humans run from my armies, but you fight. Why?" Mason shook his head. "You wouldn't understand. We fight because we love our home, our families, our freedom." Varel seemed interested. She circled Mason, watching his reactions. "Humans are weak compared to us. Your weapons are old. Your numbers are small. Yet you still resist. Maybe that's what makes us human," Mason said. "We don't give up. Not ever." The queen stopped in front of him. "You are brave, but you are also my prisoner. I could end your life with a word, but I have a different offer." Her voice grew softer, almost gentle. "Help me, and I will spare your people. Work for me, and humanity will have peace." Mason was surprised. "Why do you need my help?" Viral's eyes darkened. "Not all Xerthians follow me. There is trouble in my empire. Enemies hide in the shadows. I need someone who thinks differently. Someone like you." Mason thought quickly. If he said yes, he could protect his people. If he refused, she might destroy everything he loved. But he also knew the queen was dangerous and clever. He looked up at her and said, "Let me see my people. Let me know they're safe. Then maybe I'll listen." The queen nodded slowly. "We shall see, Captain Mason Drake. For now, you will stay here. Think about my offer." As the guards led him away, Mason's mind raced. He was far from home, deep inside the enemy's palace, facing a choice that could decide the fate of his entire species. Days passed in the blue-lit halls of the Xerthian palace. Mason Drake was kept in a large chamber filled with strange plants and soft glowing lights. He was not locked away like a prisoner, but he was never free. Guards watched him closely. He missed Earth, missed his friends, and missed the battle. Empress Varel visited him often. Each time, she brought news of the war and her strange, quiet questions. She wanted to know what made humans so strong, so different from her people. Mason answered carefully, knowing she watched his every word. One day, Varel sat across from him in a room that looked like a garden. The air was warm and smelled like flowers Mason had never seen. She smiled, but her eyes were sharp. "Why do you fight for a world so small?" she asked. Mason looked at her, steady. "Because it's our home. Because we believe in something bigger than ourselves. We fight for freedom." Varel considered this. "Xerthians fight for power and survival. You fight for hope. Tell me, human, does hope win wars?" Mason shrugged. "Sometimes it does. Sometimes it makes us try harder, even when things seem impossible." The queen nodded slowly. "I see a fire in you. It is not fear. It is not anger. It is something new, dangerous." Mason smiled slightly. It's called courage, and it's what makes us strong. Viral's advisors often argued with her about Mason. Some wanted to kill him, others feared his influence. But the queen stood firm. She believed Mason could change the Xerthian Empire, and maybe even save it. One afternoon, Varel brought Mason to a large hall filled with maps and weapons. "You will teach my warriors your ways," she said. "Show them how humans fight." Mason was surprised. "Why?" "There is a threat coming," Virel explained. "A race older and stronger than us. They wait in the darkness beyond our space. If we do not unite, we will be destroyed." Mason fought hard. He remembered the battles, the losses, the hope of his people. "If we work together, maybe we can survive." Viral's eyes glowed with a strange light. "Good. But remember, this is a test. If you fail, you will die." Mason stood tall. "I will not fail." As Mason began training the Xerthian warriors, he noticed their pride and strength, but also their fears and doubts. He pushed them to be better, to think like humans, to fight with heart. Some warriors resisted, but many began to respect him. One night, Mason looked out over the city from a palace window. The stars were bright and cold. He wondered if his friends were still alive, if Earth was still safe, and what the future held. But one thing was clear. Mason's fight had only just begun. Captain Mason Drake had never thought he would work with an alien queen. Yet here he was, standing in the training hall of the Xerthian palace, surrounded by fierce insect-like warriors. The air buzzed with tension and the sharp smell of alien metals. At first, the warriors did not trust him. They whispered among themselves, calling Mason a weak human who could never match their strength or skill. But Mason was patient. He knew winning their respect would take time. Queen Varel watched from a balcony above. Her many eyes followed Mason's every move. She believed in his courage and skill, but others in the court were not so sure. Some plotted against the strange alliance. One day, during training, Mason called out, "Focus on teamwork. Strength alone will not win this war. You must learn to think and fight together." A large Xerthian named Krath growled, "Humans are weak, Captain. You teach us nothing new." Mason smiled. "Maybe. But humans fight for more than just power. We fight for hope. And that makes us stronger." The warriors challenged Mason again and again, but he kept pushing. Slowly, they began to listen. They started to see how Mason's ideas could help them survive against their enemies. Meanwhile, Queen Varel told Mason more about the dangers they faced. "The Shadori," she said, "are an ancient species. They hunt us for our power. If they attack, they will destroy everything." Mason frowned. "Then we don't have much time. We need to prepare together." Virel nodded. "That is why I asked for you. You think differently. You fight differently. You bring hope where there is none." Days turned into weeks. Mason trained the Xerthian warriors, sharing human tactics and strategies. He taught them how to work as a team, how to use their strengths wisely, and how to never give up, even when the odds were against them. During this time, Mason and Varel met often. They talked about their worlds, their people, and the future. Mason began to see the queen not just as an enemy, but as a leader struggling to save her people. But danger lurked in the palace. Some Xerthians did not trust the queen's choice. They whispered in dark halls, plotting to remove Mason. And maybe the queen too. One evening, Mason heard a noise outside his room. He grabbed his knife, ready to fight. But it was Sarah, one of the humans who had survived the battle on Eos, and was now a prisoner like him. "We have to be careful," she whispered. "There are those who want to kill you. But the queen protects you, for now." Mason nodded. He knew this alliance was fragile. If it broke, it could mean death for them all. Outside, the stars shone cold and distant. Mason looked at them and made a promise to himself. He would fight not only for humanity, but also for this strange new alliance, because sometimes The greatest strength comes from trusting the unexpected. The palace was quiet at first, but beneath its shining halls, danger stirred like a hidden storm. Some Xerthian nobles did not like Mason Drake's presence. They whispered dark plans in shadowed rooms, angry that their queen trusted a human warrior. Commander Zyle, the same hunter who captured Mason, was among the leaders of the revolt. He believed humans were weak and dangerous, a threat to Xerthian power. Zyle said, "The Queen's weakness will destroy us. We must act now." One night, the rebels struck. Alarms echoed through the palace as warriors loyal to Zil and the rebels stormed the halls. The battle was sudden and fierce. Mason was caught off guard, but quickly grabbed his knife. He fought with all his strength, blocking attacks from armored Xerthians who once trained under him. Virel appeared in the chaos, commanding her loyal guards. She moved like a shadow, striking down enemies with quick, precise blows. Mason fought by her side, their trust in each other growing stronger with every fight. "Stay close," Virel ordered, her many eyes sharp and glowing. "We cannot lose this palace." Mason nodded, fighting off another attacker. Despite being outnumbered, the Queen's loyalists held strong. The rebels wanted the throne, but Virel would not give up her rule or the fragile alliance with humanity. During the fight, Mason saw Commander Zil charging toward the Queen. With a shout, Mason rushed forward, blocking Zyle's strike with his knife. The two clashed in a deadly duel. Zyle was strong and fast, but Mason's determination was fiercer. "Your queen is a fool," Zyle hissed. "She trusts a human. You will die for her." Mason gritted his teeth. "I fight for more than her. I fight for the future." With a final move, Mason disarmed Zyle and pinned him to the ground. The rebels began to retreat, their leader captured. Virel looked at Mason with respect. "You saved me. You saved the Empire." Mason smiled tiredly. "We saved each other." After the revolt, the palace was silent once more, but the danger was not gone. Virel knew other enemies would try to break their alliance. Mason knew the fight was far from over. That night, the Queen and Mason stood on a balcony overlooking the stars. The city below was calm, but the war beyond their walls was growing fiercer. "We must be ready," Virel said quietly. "We will be," Mason promised. As they looked into the night sky, both understood one truth. Survival meant standing together, even if the universe wanted to tear them apart. The sky over the Xerthian homeworld darkened as warning signals blared across the cities. Empress Virel stood on the balcony of her palace, her many eyes fixed on the horizon. The ancient enemy, the Chidori, was coming. "They are closer than we thought," Virel said to Mason Drake, who stood beside her. His jaw was set, eyes sharp with determination. Mason nodded. "We can't wait for them to attack. We must strike first." The Chidori were a terrifying race, larger than the Xerthians, covered in heavy armor, and armed with weapons that could destroy whole planets. They had hunted the Xerthians for centuries, and now they were back to finish the war. Virel called her commanders together. The palace filled with maps, star charts, and data streams. Mason pointed to a weak point in the Chidori fleet's path. "If we attack here, we can slow them down." Some Xerthian commanders doubted the plan. "It's risky, Queen. The Chidori will crush us." But Virel trusted Mason. "Prepare the fleet. Mason will lead the strike." The humans and Xerthians worked together like never before. Mason trained the Xerthian pilots and soldiers, sharing human tactics and teaching them to trust one another. The Xerthians, proud and strong, learned new ways to fight. Finally, the day came. The fleet launched into space, stars streaking past as they moved toward battle. Mason stood on the bridge of the flagship, feeling the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. The Chidori fleet appeared, huge and terrifying. Black ships covered in spikes and glowing red lights. The battle began with loud explosions and bright beams of energy. Mason commanded his forces with skill and courage. He ordered flanking attacks, quick retreats, and surprise strikes. The Xerthians fought fiercely, inspired by Mason's leadership. At one point, a Chidori warship targeted the flagship. Mason's heart pounded as he saw the ship's weapons charging. With a sharp command, the pilots dodged and fired back. The flagship's shields held, but barely. The battle raged for hours. Mason's team pushed the Chidori back, forcing them to retreat. It was not a complete victory, but it was enough to save the Xerthian homeworld. For now, back on the palace balcony, Varel looked at Mason with new respect. "You have done what no Xerthian could. You have saved us." Mason smiled tiredly. "We saved each other." But the war was not over. The Chidori would return. And Mason knew that the future depended on the fragile alliance between humans and Xerthians, an alliance built on trust, courage, and hope. The battle with the Chidori had ended, but the cost was high. Xerthian cities lay in ruins, and many brave warriors had fallen. Empress Varel stood in her private chamber, staring at the shattered map of her empire. The war was far from over. Mason Drake entered quietly, his face tired but steady. He knew Varel was carrying a heavy burden. "What will you do now?" he asked. Varel did not answer at once. Her many eyes looked distant, filled with pain and thought. Finally, she spoke. "The only way to save my people is to change everything." Mason frowned. "Change? The Xerthian way of power and conquest must end," Varel said. "I must give up my throne, share power with humans and others willing to fight for peace." Mason's eyes widened. "That's a big risk." Varel nodded. "It is, but without this change, my empire will fall. The Chidori will destroy us all." Mason stepped closer. "And what about you? Will you survive this?" The Queen's voice was soft but strong. "I must. For my people. For the future." For days, Varel worked with Mason and her trusted advisors. They planned a new government, a council of humans, Xerthians, and other species who wanted peace. It was a bold plan, one that many would oppose. Rumors spread quickly. Some Xerthians called Varel a traitor. Others feared losing power. The Queen faced threats from within and outside her court. Mason stayed by her side. "You are not alone," he told her. "We will face this together." The day came for Varel to announce her decision. In front of the palace crowd, she spoke clearly and proudly. "The old ways are over. We will build a new future, together." Cheers and boos mixed in the crowd. Mason saw the hope in the eyes of some, and the anger in others. Later, as the palace grew quiet, Varel and Mason stood on the balcony. The stars shone cold and bright. "Will this peace last?" Mason asked. Varel smiled faintly. "It must, for all of us." Mason looked out into the darkness. "Then let's make sure it does." The path ahead was dangerous and uncertain. But Mason and Varel knew one thing: hope was worth fighting for.